This is stone and slumber, where the medieval world drifts slowly into your dreams. Tonight, you walk the quiet paths of another age. Before we start, do let me know below in the comments where you guys are listening from and what time it is there. It's always nice to know from where around the world people are listening from. You wake before the emperor. The palace of Constantinople still sleeps under layers of silk and stone, but you, a guard of the Varangian cohort, are already awake. The darkness feels thick, almost solid, as if the night itself has weight. Around you, the quiet breathing of other guards fills the narrow sleeping chamber, a stone room deep within the walls of the great palace, far from the gilded halls where courtiers dream their perfumed dreams. Your eyes open without command, no bells have rung, no voice has called. You simply wake, as guards do, pulled from sleep by an instinct older than walls or empires. The shift begins not with trumpets, but with the soft shuffle of boots on marble, the clink of male shirts, and the whispered prayers of men who know that today, like every day, could end in blood or boredom. You sit up slowly on your narrow cot, feeling the stiffness in your shoulders, the cold that has settled into your bones during the night. The room smells of wool and oil, of sweat and iron, of men who live close together in service to something larger than themselves. 3 other guards stir in the darkness. One mutters a prayer in Norse. Another reaches for the water jug, drinks deeply, then passes it to you without a word. The water tastes of copper. Everything in Constantinople tastes faintly of something. Spices you cannot name, smoke from 1,000 fires, the peculiar mineral quality of water drawn from cisterns deep beneath the earth. You have been here long enough that your tongue no longer questions these flavors. You drink, you set the jug down, you rise. Your gear waits where you left it, folded with the same care a priest might show his vestments. Mail shirt first, heavy as a small child, cold as winter sea. You pull it over your head, feeling the familiar weight settle onto your shoulders, the way the rings catch at your tunic, the way your body remembers how to carry this burden even before your mind fully wakes. Then the leather belt, wide and studded, worn smooth by years of use. Your hands know every notch, every groove. The other guards dress in silence. This is not a ceremony. It is routine, the slow rhythm of preparation that happens every morning in chambers like this throughout the palace. Someone coughs, someone else adjusts his belt, checks his knife, runs a thumb along the edge to test its sharpness. These small gestures are a language older than words. You reach for your axe, the ramphair. Double-bladed, heavy, hanging from its leather strap. The handle is worn smooth where countless hands have gripped it, where your hand grips it now. The weight of it is reassuring, familiar, a reminder that you are not defenseless, that between you and the world stands this length of wood and iron. You sling it over your right shoulder, feeling the balance shift, your body adjusting to the presence of the weapon as naturally as breathing. One of the guards strikes a flint. Sparks bloom in the darkness, then catch on the wick of an oil lamp. Yellow light spills across the stone walls, revealing the simplicity of this place. No tapestries here, no mosaics, just stone and straw and the practical emptiness of a room meant for sleeping, not living. The lamp's flame sways slightly, pushed by some draft threading through the palace's endless corridors. You pull on your boots, feeling the leather creak, the way they mold to your feet after months of wear. Outside, somewhere in the vastness of the palace, a rooster crows. The sound is distant, muffled by walls and distance, but it marks the edge of night, the approaching dawn that will bring light but not warmth to these stone halls. The other guards are ready now. 4 of you, dressed alike in mail and leather, axes slung, faces still creased from sleep but eyes alert. One is a Swede, tall even among tall men, with a beard braided in the northern fashion. Another is from Ruse lands, dark-haired and silent, a man who speaks more with his hands than his tongue. The third is your countryman, from the fjords you left 3 years ago, a lifetime ago, when you took the emperor's gold and swore the oath that binds you still. You exchange nods, no words are needed. The 4 of you move toward the door, boots scraping softly on stone. Someone lifts the heavy iron latch. The door swings open on hinges that whisper rather than creak. Palace blacksmiths know their craft. Cold air rushes in, carrying with it the smell of the city beyond the walls. Brine from the sea, smoke from morning fires, the faint sweetness of bread baking somewhere in the palace kitchens. You step into the corridor. The walls here are dressed stone, fitted so closely that no mortar shows between the blocks. The floor is marble, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, glowing faintly in the lamplight your companion carries. The corridor stretches ahead, disappearing into shadow, a passage that leads deeper into the heart of the palace, toward the chambers where emperors sleep and courtiers plot and servants scurry like ants through tunnels only they fully understand. Your breath mists in the air. Spring has come to Constantinople, but mornings still hold winter's memory. The palace never truly warms. Stone remembers cold. It holds it, hoards it, releases it slowly through the hours of daylight until evening comes and the cycle begins again. You walk, the rhythm of your boots on marble becomes a kind of music, steady and measured. Behind you, the sleeping chamber falls away into darkness. Ahead, the corridor branches, splits, offers choices that are no choices at all because you know the way by heart now, the route from sleeping quarters to assembly point, from assembly point to the emperor's wing. You have walked this path 100 times, 200, enough that your feet could find it in total darkness. A servant passes, head down, carrying a basket of something covered with cloth. He does not look at you. People rarely look directly at Varangian guards. You are too foreign, too large, too different from the Greeks who fill this palace with their silks and their complicated etiquette. Your presence is tolerated, valued even, but never quite comfortable. You are the barbarians who guard the civilized, the wolves who protect the sheep. The corridor widens. You pass a chapel, its door standing open. Inside, a single candle burns before an icon of Christ Pantocrator, the ruler of all, his eyes following whoever passes. One of your companions crosses himself. The gesture is automatic, a reflex born of Vladimir's conversion, of the baptism that was required before the Rus would send their warriors south to Constantinople. You do not cross yourself. Your prayers are older, quieter, offered to gods you do not name aloud in this Christian place. Another turn. The corridor slopes downwards slightly, following the contours of the hill upon which the palace sprawls. Somewhere above you, courtiers still sleep in their cushioned chambers. Somewhere below, kitchen fires are being stoked, bread is being kneaded, the machinery of the palace is beginning to turn. But here in this in-between space, there is only stone and lamplight and the quiet footsteps of guards moving through the purple dawn. You emerge into a courtyard. The sky above is not quite black, not quite blue, but something in between, the color of deep water or old bruises. Stars still prick the darkness, though their light is fading. The air smells of dew and stone and the salt wind that blows up from the Bosphorus, carrying with it the promise of ships and distant lands and all the world that lies beyond these walls. Other guards are gathering. You see them in clusters, dark shapes against darker stone, men checking weapons, adjusting straps, speaking in low voices in a dozen languages. There are more Varangians here, tall Northmen with axes and swords. There are Greek soldiers too, smaller, armored differently, speaking rapidly among themselves. And there are officers, recognizable by their bearing if not their insignia, moving among the groups, counting heads, making certain all pieces are in place for the day's careful choreography of security. You find your place in the formation. The Swedish guard stands to your left. Your countryman stands to your right. The Rus warrior takes position one step back, completing the small unit that will move as one through the coming hours. This is your squad, your brotherhood, the men who will stand with you in doorways and corridors, who will watch your back while you watch theirs. An officer approaches. He is Greek, middle-aged, his beard trimmed in the fashion favored by palace officials. He carries no weapon, only a wooden tablet on which names are written in neat columns. He looks at each of you in turn, his eyes sharp despite the early hour, checking that you are present, that your gear is in order, that you are fit for duty. He asks a question in Greek. The Swedish guard answers in the same language, his accent thick but his words clear enough. The officer makes a mark on his tablet and moves on. The sky lightens, purple becomes gray, becomes the palest gold. The first true light of dawn touches the top of the palace walls, turning the stone momentarily warm before the color fades back to its usual gray. Birds begin to sing somewhere in the gardens. A bell rings once, twice, 3 times, marking the hour. The assembly is complete. 40 guards stand in the courtyard, organized into their units, weapons ready, faces impassive. The officer with the tablet steps forward and speaks briefly in Greek, giving the day's assignments, reminding everyone of their duties, his voice carrying across the still morning air. You understand perhaps 1 word in 3, but it does not matter. You know your assignment. You know where you will stand, which corridors you will patrol, which doors you will guard. The routine varies only in its details, never in its essence. The officer finishes speaking. The formations break apart. Guards peel away in groups, heading to their assigned posts. Your squad moves toward the inner palace, toward the private quarters where the emperor still sleeps, guarded even in slumber by men who will die before they allow harm to reach him. You cross another courtyard, pass through a doorway guarded by stone lions worn smooth by time, enter a corridor more richly decorated than those in the outer palace. Here there are mosaics on the walls, saints and emperors, battles and triumphs, all rendered in tiny tiles of colored stone and glass that catch the lamplight and seem almost to move. The floor is patterned marble, geometric designs that please the eye without demanding attention. The air smells different here, touched with incense and beeswax, and the faint perfume that clings to places where powerful people live. Your boots make almost no sound on this floor. You walk as ghosts walk, present but not intrusive, deadly but silent. This is the art you have learned, to be a shadow with teeth, to be a wall that bleeds. Another turn, the corridor narrows. You pass a door covered in bronze, its surface embossed with images you do not pause to examine. You pass niches where statues stand, old gods or old emperors. It is hard to tell which, their faces worn by time into expressions of serene blankness. You pass windows that look out onto interior courtyards where fountains play and fruit trees grow in careful rows. Finally, you reach your station. A hallway not particularly wide, not particularly grand, but strategically positioned near the emperor's private chambers. This is where you will stand for the next watch. 4 hours, perhaps 5, depending on when the emperor wakes, when he chooses to begin his day. Until then, you wait. The Swedish guard takes position at one end of the hallway. Your countryman takes the other. You and the ruse warrior stand in the middle, backs to the wall, eyes scanning the empty space before you. Nothing moves, nothing sounds. The palace holds its breath, waiting for its master to wake. You shift your weight slightly, settling into the stance that you can hold for hours. Knees soft, back straight, hand resting on the axe handle at your shoulder. The stone wall behind you is cold even through your mail and tunic. You can feel it leaching warmth from your body, patient and relentless as time itself. Dawn has come, the emperor sleeps, and you stand as you stood yesterday, as you will stand tomorrow, a piece in the great game of power and protection that plays out endlessly in these halls. You are awake before him, you will sleep after him. In between, you are the wall between life and death, between empire and chaos. The purple dawn fades into morning. Your shift has begun. Your armor is not just protection. It is a message. Every rivet, every polished plate, every silk sash wrapped around your waist tells the world that you stand between the emperor and death. The mail shirt alone weighs nearly 2 stone, iron rings woven so tightly that no blade can easily pierce them. You have worn it so long now that your shoulders have reshaped themselves around its weight. Your back has learned to carry this burden as naturally as your own skin. You stand in the corridor, hand resting on the handle of your axe, and think about the armor. How strange that protection should feel so heavy. How odd that safety should come at the price of constant discomfort. The rings press against your shoulders through the padded tunic beneath. Your neck aches from holding your head upright under the weight of it all. But this is the price. This is what it means to be a guard. The axe at your shoulder is a Dane axe, broad-bladed and heavy. Byzantine writers call you and your companions Pelikiphoroi Barbaroi, axe-bearing barbarians, a name that is not entirely wrong. The blade is wide enough that a man's head would fit comfortably on its edge, though you try not to think of such things during the long hours of standing guard. The steel is polished until it gleams, reflecting torchlight in a way that draws the eye, that reminds everyone who sees it that this weapon is not ornamental. You adjust the axe slightly, feeling its weight shift on your shoulder. The wooden handle is smooth where countless hands have gripped it, where your hand grips it now when the moment comes to draw it from its resting place. You know the balance of this weapon, the way a musician knows his instrument. You know how it feels in motion, the arc it makes when swung, the way momentum carries the blade through flesh and bone with terrible efficiency. But for now, it rests. For now, it is simply weight. The Swedish guard standing at the far end of the corridor shifts his stance. His mail catches the light from the oil lamps burning in their sconces. Gold thread is woven into the hem of his tunic, a mark of his station, a reminder that the Varangian Guard is not merely another military unit, but an elite force, hand-picked, highly paid, draped in the visible symbols of imperial favor. You look down at your own clothing. The tunic beneath your mail is dyed a deep red, the color of wine or blood, depending on the light. Around your waist, a silk sash, not something you would have owned in your former life, not something that would have meant anything to the farmers and fishermen you grew up among. But here, in this place where appearance matters as much as ability, even barbarian guards must look the part. Your sword hangs at your left hip, a secondary weapon but no less important. It is not a northern blade. The Byzantines gave it to you when you joined the guard, a straight sword with a simple crossguard, functional rather than beautiful. You have used it twice in 3 years. Once to kill a would-be assassin who came too close to the emperor's chambers. Once to dispatch a wounded enemy soldier during a campaign in Anatolia, when the guard was called to accompany the emperor into the field. Both times, the sword did its work without complaint. Both times you cleaned it carefully afterward, oiling the blade, checking for nicks in the edge. The armor you wear, the weapons you carry, they are tools, yes, but they are also symbols. The palace guards are not just soldiers. You are proof that the emperor commands the finest, the deadliest, the most loyal warriors from the frozen north to the sun-scorched east. When courtiers see you standing in doorways, when ambassadors pass you in corridors, when the emperor himself walks surrounded by his axe-bearing retinue, the message is clear. This man is protected by forces beyond the reach of ordinary intrigue. You think about this sometimes during the long hours of standing watch. How much of your purpose is actual protection and how much is theater? How often does your presence prevent violence simply by existing, simply by standing silent and armed in places where others might hesitate to act? It is impossible to know. The assassinations that never happen leave no trace. The plots that die in their infancy because the plotters see Varangian guards and lose their nerve. These are victories that no one records, no one celebrates. But right now, mostly, you are just tired. Your legs ache from standing. Your back complains about the weight of the mail. Your neck is stiff from holding your head in one position for too long. You shift your weight slightly, carefully, trying not to be obvious about it. The art of standing guard is not the art of remaining perfectly still. That is impossible for any living creature. The art is in moving so subtly, so minimally, that no one notices. A slight shift of weight from one foot to the other. A small adjustment of the shoulders. A slow, controlled breath that expands the chest just enough to ease the pressure of the mail for a moment. The ruse warrior standing near you does not move at all, or seems not to. His face is impassive, his eyes fixed on some point in the middle distance. You wonder if he hurts the way you hurt, if his shoulders ache and his legs protest, and his mind wanders during these endless hours of vigilance. Probably. But he shows nothing. That is the other art, not merely enduring discomfort, but concealing it entirely. A servant passes through the corridor, carrying a basket covered with linen. She does not look at you. People rarely look directly at Varangian guards. You are too foreign, too large, too heavily armed. Your presence is acknowledged but not engaged with, the way one acknowledges a guard dog without attempting to pet it. She hurries past, her soft shoes making almost no sound on the marble floor, and disappears around a corner. Silence returns. The oil lamps flicker slightly in a draft that comes from somewhere you cannot identify. The palace is full of such drafts, currents of air that move through its endless corridors like invisible rivers. Sometimes they carry smells, incense from the chapels, bread from the kitchens, perfume from the private chambers where courtiers prepare themselves for the day's performances. Sometimes they carry sounds, distant voices, the chime of bells, the soft pad of footsteps on stone. You breathe slowly, feeling the weight of the armor with each inhalation. The mail restricts your breathing slightly, not enough to be dangerous, but enough to be a constant presence. A reminder that you are encased in iron, that you have chosen, or circumstances have chosen for you, a life of heaviness. Your countryman at the other end of the corridor adjusts his axe. The small sound echoes slightly in the empty space. He catches your eye for just a moment, and something passes between you, not quite a smile, not quite a grimace, just an acknowledgement of shared experience. You are both far from home. You both wear armor that weighs on you like accumulated years. You both stand in a palace that is not yours, guarding a man you have never spoken to, serving an empire that will never truly accept you as anything other than useful barbarians. But the pay is good. The emperor's gold is real and heavy and spends anywhere in the world. The privilege of palutasvaf, the palace pillaging that follows an emperor's death, has made some Varangians wealthy beyond the dreams of northern farmers. When an emperor dies, the guards have the right to run to the imperial treasury and take as much gold and as many gems as they can carry. Men have returned to Scandinavia with fortunes, bought land, built halls, married well, become chieftains in their own right. That is the promise. That is what keeps men standing in corridors, bearing weight, enduring pain. The hope that one day the armor will come off for good, that the gold will be enough, that you can go home and rest. But that day is not today. Today you stand, you watch. You feel every ring of mail pressing against your shoulders, every ounce of the axe pulling at your arm. You are a wall made of flesh and iron. You are a message written in steel and silence. You are proof that the emperor is valuable enough to be guarded by men who have traveled farther than most people can imagine, who have given up their language and their homeland and their former lives to stand between him and the world. The Swedish guard coughs quietly, then resumes his stillness. Somewhere deeper in the palace, a bell rings 3 times, marking some hour or half-hour in the complicated schedule by which the palace regulates itself. The sound fades slowly, absorbed by stone and distance. You think about your armor again, how it was new once, bright and unmarked, how it has acquired small dents and scratches over the years, each one a memory of some moment when it did its job, when it turned aside a blade or an arrow or simply absorbed the impact of a fall. The mail is darkening slightly with age and use, despite your efforts to keep it clean and oiled. Iron wants to rust, steel wants to corrode, everything decays given time, but not today. Today the armor holds. Today the weapons are sharp and ready. Today you stand in your appointed place, carrying the weight of gold and steel, bearing the burden of being both guardian and symbol, both protector and decoration. The emperor still sleeps, or perhaps he is awake now, attended by servants and eunuchs, beginning his own slow ritual of preparation for the day. You do not know, you are not close enough to know such things. You are here in this corridor at this station, doing the work that justifies the gold you receive, the silk you wear, the foreign food you eat. Your hand rests on the axe handle. The wood is warm from your touch. The weight has become familiar, almost comforting in its constancy. This axe has killed men. It may kill again, or it may spend your entire career resting on your shoulder, a threat that never needs to be fulfilled, a promise that never needs to be kept. Either way you carry it, either way you stand, the armor weighs on you and you bear it. This is your purpose. This is your duty. This is the life you chose when you took the emperor's gold and swore the oath that binds you still. The corridor is quiet, the lamps burn low, and you wait armored and armed for whatever the day will bring. You walk and walk and walk some more. The palace is a labyrinth of corridors, courtyards, chapels, and hidden passages. Your job is to know them all, to patrol them, to watch every shadow and every face. The great palace is not a single building, but a series of pavilions and structures sprawling across more than 200,000 square feet, built on terraces that descend from the hippodrome down to the shoreline of the Sea of Marmara. The slope is steep, nearly 100 feet from top to bottom, and the architects who built this place centuries ago created vaults and substructures to support the weight of empire on this tilted ground. The order comes mid-morning. Patrol the western corridor, then circle through the chapel quarter, then return to station. You and the ruse warrior nod to the officer who delivers the instruction in Greek, then you begin walking. The Swedish guard and your countrymen remain at their posts. The palace always needs guards standing still, but it also needs guards moving, eyes that scan new spaces, presences that remind everyone that security is not fixed but flowing, that protection moves like water through every channel of this vast complex. You turn left out of the corridor, where you have been standing, and immediately enter a space you have walked dozens of times before. The floor here is patterned marble, geometric designs in white and gray and rose, fitted so precisely that the seams are almost invisible. The walls are covered in mosaics, saints with golden halos, emperors in purple robes, scenes from scripture rendered in thousands of tiny colored tiles that catch the light from high windows. You do not pause to admire them. You have seen them too many times. Beauty becomes ordinary when you encounter it daily. The ruse warrior walks 2 paces behind you, his boots making soft sounds on the marble. This is the pattern. One guard leads, one follows, eyes covering different angles, ensuring that no blind spot goes unwatched. You are a unit, a small piece of the larger machinery of security that keeps the emperor alive and the palace functioning. You pass a doorway guarded by 2 Greek soldiers. They nod as you approach, you nod back. There is a hierarchy even among guards. The Varangians are elite, better paid, more trusted with the emperor's personal safety. But in these corridors, professional courtesy is maintained. Everyone understands that the work is serious, that threats can come from anywhere. That pride must not interfere with vigilance. The corridor opens into a courtyard. Sunlight falls in shafts through the open air above, illuminating a fountain where water trickles from the mouth of a bronze lion. The sound is soothing, almost musical. Trees grow here, cypress and fig, their roots planted in soil brought up from somewhere far below. Benches line the edges of the courtyard, though no one sits on them now. It is too early. The courtiers who will eventually fill this space with their conversations and intrigues are still in their chambers, being dressed by servants, preparing their faces and their words for the day's performances. You cross the courtyard, hand resting on your axe handle out of habit. The ruse warrior scans the windows that look down onto this space from the surrounding buildings. Anyone could be watching. Anyone could be preparing something. This is the constant calculation. How many threats could exist in any given moment, and how quickly could you respond to them? Another corridor. This one is narrower, less decorated. You are moving through a service passage now, one of the arteries that allows servants and supplies to flow through the palace without disturbing the ceremonial spaces where power displays itself. The walls here are plain stone, the floor unadorned. You pass a servant carrying a basket of linens. She presses herself against the wall to let you pass, eyes down, saying nothing. You say nothing in return. Speech is not necessary. Your presence is communication enough. A staircase descends. You take it, stepping carefully on stone steps worn smooth by centuries of feet. The palace has layers, upper terraces where the emperor lives and governs, middle levels where administration happens, lower levels where kitchens and storage rooms and workshops produce the material necessities that keep this machine running. You move between these layers constantly, your patrols designed to cover vertical space as well as horizontal, to ensure that threats cannot approach from below any more easily than from the sides. The staircase opens onto another corridor, this one smelling of incense. You are near the chapel quarter now, where dozens of small churches and prayer rooms cluster together like cells in a honeycomb. The Byzantine court is deeply religious, obsessively so. Prayers mark every hour. Saints are invoked for every occasion. Icons hang in every room, their painted eyes watching everything. You pass a chapel dedicated to the Theotokos, the Mother of God, where candles burn before a jeweled icon. A priest stands inside, chanting something in Greek, his voice echoing off stone walls. You do not enter. You are not required to pray during patrols, though some guards do, stopping briefly to cross themselves or mutter a quick petition to whichever god or saint they favor. The ruse warrior behind you does cross himself as he passes the chapel door. The gesture is quick, automatic, a reflex born of a lifetime of orthodox teaching. You keep walking. Courtiers glide past in jeweled robes. 3 of them walking together, speaking rapidly in Greek. Their hands gesture as they talk, elaborate movements that seem to carry as much meaning as their words. They smell of perfume, something floral and sweet, expensive enough that you could probably live for a month on what they spend to smell pleasant. They glance at you as they pass, but their eyes slide away quickly. You are furniture to them, dangerous furniture perhaps, but not worth genuine attention. Servants scurry with trays of fruit and wine. You count them automatically. 3 servants, 2 trays, 1 guard escorting them. The guard is Greek, older, his face lined with years of service. He nods to you, you nod back. The servants continue on their way, heading towards some private chamber where someone important enough to have breakfast brought to them is waiting. You turn right, entering what was once the Palace of Daphne, the main imperial residence in earlier times. The architecture here is older, more ornate. The ceilings are higher. The mosaics are more elaborate, depicting not just saints and emperors but entire narratives, battles, coronations, triumphs. You have heard that this building contains the octagon, the emperor's old bedchamber from centuries past, though you have never seen it yourself. There are parts of the palace that even guards do not enter, private spaces reserved for the emperor and his most intimate attendants. A eunuch passes, his robes rustling softly. Eunuchs are everywhere in the palace, administrators, advisors, guardians of the women's quarters, keepers of secrets. This one carries a scroll, his face impassive, his steps purposeful. He does not acknowledge your presence. Eunuchs occupy a strange position in the palace hierarchy, neither male nor female in the Byzantine understanding, freed from certain desires, and therefore trusted with certain responsibilities. You do not understand them. You are not sure you are meant to. The corridor widens. You are approaching one of the main reception areas now, a space used for smaller audiences, for meetings between the emperor and visiting dignitaries who do not warrant the full ceremony of the throne room. The hall is called the 19 cubita, the 19 couches, though you see no couches now, only empty space and pillars and more mosaics depicting imperial glory. 2 guards stand at the entrance to this hall. Varangians like yourself. One is a Norwegian, the other a Dane. You exchange brief nods. The Norwegian asks a question in Norse. Anything unusual on your patrol? You shake your head. Nothing, just the usual. He grunts in acknowledgement and returns his attention to the hall he is guarding. You continue walking. The palace stretches out before you, seemingly endless, a maze of power and stone. Every turn reveals another corridor. Every corridor leads to more rooms, more courtyards, more passages. You have been here 3 years, and you still do not know every corner of this place. Perhaps no one does. Perhaps the palace is too large to be fully known, too complex to be held entirely in one mind. The ruse warrior coughs quietly behind you. You glance back. He makes a small gesture, everything clear, and you continue. Trust is essential. You must be able to rely on the man at your back without question, without hesitation. In battle, in crisis, in the sudden moment when an assassin appears from nowhere, there is no time for doubt. Either you trust your companions or you die. You descend another staircase, this one steeper, leading down toward the lower terraces where the palace meets the sea walls. The air grows cooler as you descend, damper, touched with the salt smell of the sea. Windows here look out over the water, offering glimpses of ships in the harbor, of the Asian shore across the strait, of the world beyond the palace that continues without regard for imperial concerns. A passage leads through what might be storage rooms or workshops. You are not entirely sure. Voices drift from behind closed doors, speaking in languages you do not understand. Greek certainly, but also Armenian perhaps, or Arabic, or some other tongue from the empire's far reaches. Constantinople draws people from everywhere, and the palace is a microcosm of that diversity. You turn back now, beginning the return journey to your station. The patrol has taken perhaps an hour, maybe more. Time is strange in the palace, difficult to measure when every corridor looks similar, when the light from windows does not change much from 1 hour to the next. You navigate by memory, by landmarks. The fountain with the bronze lion, the chapel with the jeweled icon, the hall with 19 couches, the staircase worn smooth by feet. Priests chant in distant chapels. Somewhere bells ring, marking some liturgical hour. The sound echoes through the stone passages, softened by distance but still audible, a reminder that time moves even when it feels suspended. You climb stairs, walk corridors, pass through courtyards. The palace is beautiful, yes, but beauty hides daggers. You have seen the bodies of men who forgot this, who let themselves be distracted by mosaics and perfume and the illusion of civilized safety. The palace is a place of culture and art and refined sensibility. It is also a place where people disappear, where poison finds its way into wine cups, where knives slip between ribs in shadowed alcoves. Your hand rests on your axe. Your eyes scan constantly. The ruse warrior follows, silent and alert. This is the work. Walking, watching, knowing that most days nothing happens, but that one day something will, and on that day you must be ready. You return to your station. The Swedish guard and your countrymen are still there, still standing, still watching. They look at you as you approach. You nod, patrol complete, nothing to report. They nod back. The routine continues. The palace stands. And you walk its endless halls, a guardian in a labyrinth protecting power from the shadows it creates. The emperor holds court. You stand behind him, silent as a statue, while ambassadors from distant lands bow and offer gifts. The Chrysotriclinos, the golden reception hall, is octagonal, its dome rising high above on 8 arches that form apses around the perimeter. 16 windows pierce the dome, allowing shafts of light to fall into the hall, illuminating motes of dust that drift like tiny stars through the air. The mosaics covering every surface gleam with gold leaf. Christ enthroned above the emperor's throne, the Virgin Mary over the entrance, angels and apostles and martyrs arrayed along the walls in perfect hierarchical order. You stand in the northeastern apse, near the oratory of Saint Theodore, where the emperor's crown is kept when not on his head. Your position is not random. Every guard's placement is calculated, designed to create overlapping fields of vision to ensure that no angle of approach to the emperor goes unwatched. The Swedish guard stands in the northern apse, the one called the Pantheon, where officials wait before being summoned. Your countryman stands near the southern apse that leads to the imperial bedroom. The ruse warrior stands near the main entrance, the Tripartite vestibule. 4 guards, 4 positions, 4 sets of eyes constantly scanning. The throne itself sits on the eastern apse, the bema, raised on a platform and surrounded by a bronze railing. The emperor sits motionless, draped in purple silk so heavily embroidered with gold thread that the fabric barely moves when he breathes. His crown catches the light from the dome windows, reflecting it in sharp points that hurt to look at directly. He is not a large man, few Byzantine emperors are, but he seems large now, magnified by ceremony, by costume, by the carefully constructed theater of imperial power. An ambassador approaches. He is Persian or perhaps Arab, you are not always certain of the distinctions. His robes are fine, his beard oiled and perfumed. He carries a wooden box inlaid with ivory. 2 servants follow him, bearing larger gifts. Bolts of silk in colors you have no names for, a chest that might contain jewels or spices or precious stones. The ambassador bows deeply, then kneels, then prostrates himself fully on the marble floor in the ritual of proskenses that all visitors to the Byzantine court must perform. You don't move, you don't speak, you barely breathe. Your job is to be a wall, a shield made flesh, radiating menace to anyone who might think about harming the man on the throne. Your hand rests on your axe handle, not gripping it exactly, but touching it, a reminder to everyone in the hall that violence is available should it be needed. The emperor gestures. An interpreter steps forward, a palace official fluent in whatever language the ambassador speaks. Words are exchanged. The ambassador rises to his knees, presents his gifts, speaks at length about friendship between nations, about trade agreements, about the wisdom and glory of the emperor who sits before him. The interpreter translates, his voice carrying through the hall. Officials standing in the apses listen intently, their faces revealing nothing. You watch the ambassador, you watch his servants, you watch the officials. Your eyes move constantly but slowly, scanning faces for signs of nervousness, hands for signs of weapons, postures for signs of hostile intent. Most of the time, you see nothing suspicious. Most ambassadors are exactly what they appear to be: diplomats seeking advantage, merchants seeking profit, representatives of distant powers seeking to curry favor with Constantinople. But sometimes, rarely but sometimes, an ambassador is a cover for an assassin, a gift is a vehicle for poison, a servant is actually a trained killer waiting for his moment. Hours pass, your legs ache, your back screams, but you don't flinch. To move is to fail is unthinkable. Another ambassador enters. This one is Frankish, tall and pale, uncomfortable in the elaborate robes he has been given to wear in the emperor's presence. He brings swords, northern blades, long and straight, inscribed with runes or Christian prayers. The emperor accepts them graciously. They are added to the growing collection of gifts that servants have been arranging in the apses. African ivory tusks, Russian furs, Armenian carpets, treasures from every corner of the known world, all flowing to Constantinople, all offered to the emperor who sits at the center of the civilized world. The Frankish ambassador struggles with the proskenses. He is not accustomed to prostrating himself before any man. The interpreter whispers instructions. The ambassador complies, reluctantly, his face flushing with what might be embarrassment or anger. You watch him carefully. Proud men are dangerous men. Humiliated proud men are even more so. But the moment passes. The ambassador rises, presents his credentials, speaks through the interpreter about his king's great respect for the Byzantine emperor. You shift your weight minutely from your left foot to your right. The movement is so small that no one could notice unless they were watching specifically for it. But it relieves the pressure on your left knee, which has been protesting for the last half hour. You hold this new position, feeling your right leg take the load, knowing that in another half hour you will shift again, a slow rotation of discomfort that allows you to remain standing without collapsing. The hall smells of incense. Censers hang from silver chains, swaying gently, releasing thin streams of scented smoke that rise toward the dome. The smell is sweet and heavy, cloying after a while, mixing with the perfume of the courtiers and the oil in the lamps, and the peculiar scent that comes from having dozens of people gathered in an enclosed space for hours. A messenger enters, moving quickly but quietly. He approaches a palace official standing in the northern apse. Words are whispered. The official nods, then approaches the throne carefully, respectfully, waiting for the emperor to acknowledge him. More words are whispered. The emperor listens, nods slightly. The official withdraws. The machinery of empire continues turning, even during these ceremonial audiences. Messages arrive constantly from the provinces, from the armies, from the fleet, from tax collectors and generals and bishops. The emperor must know everything, must respond to everything, must keep the entire empire balanced in his mind even while he sits motionless on his throne, accepting gifts from foreigners. The Swedish guard in the Pantheon apse shifts his stance. You notice because you are trained to notice. He is uncomfortable, perhaps more uncomfortable than usual. His face remains impassive, but his shoulders have tightened slightly. You make a mental note, check on him when the audience ends. Guards who are in pain or distress are guards whose attention might waver at a crucial moment. Another ambassador. This one is from somewhere in the Caucasus, Georgian, perhaps, or Elenian. He brings horses, magnificent animals with arched necks and intelligent eyes, led into the hall by grooms who are clearly terrified of making a mistake in the emperor's presence. The horses' hooves ring on the marble floor. One of them shies slightly, nervous in the unfamiliar environment. The groom steadies it with practiced hands. The emperor examines the horses from his throne, then signals his approval. They are led away to the imperial stables. Your back aches, the small of your back specifically, where the weight of the mail shirt pulls at your spine, where tension accumulates during long periods of standing still. You cannot stretch. You cannot roll your shoulders. You cannot do anything that might be interpreted as restlessness or inattention. So you breathe through the pain, slow, deep breaths that expand your ribs and relieve the pressure slightly, and you wait for the audience to end. The light from the dome windows shifts as the sun moves across the sky. Shadows that were short when the audience began have lengthened, stretching across the marble floor, climbing the walls. You have been standing here for 3 hours, perhaps 4. Time is difficult to measure when nothing changes except the faces of the ambassadors, the types of gifts they bring, the languages they speak through interpreters. Persian silk, African ivory, Frankish swords, Russian furs. Frankish swords again, a different embassy, different swords, but the same basic transaction, gifts in exchange for favor, treasure in exchange for alliance. You watch it all with eyes that see everything and reveal nothing. Your face is a mask, your body is a statue. You are not a person in this moment but a function, a piece of the emperor's security apparatus, as impersonal as the bronze railing that surrounds the throne. Courtiers stand in the apses, watching the ceremonies with expressions of practiced interest. They wear silk robes in various colors, each color denoting rank and position within the palace hierarchy. Purple is reserved for the emperor alone. Anyone else who wears it commits treason. But there are gradations: scarlet for the highest officials, blue for mid-level administrators, green for lesser functionaries. The hall is a rainbow of carefully regulated status, every person's importance visible in the hue of their clothing. Your countryman near the southern apse catches your eye for the briefest moment. No expression passes between you, but somehow you know what he is thinking because you are thinking the same thing. How much longer? When will this end? When can we return to our quarters and remove this armor and sit down and eat and rest? But these thoughts remain unspoken, unacknowledged. Duty comes before comfort. Always, the last ambassador of the day approaches. He is from somewhere in the west, Italy perhaps, or Dalmatia. He brings religious relics, fragments of bone in jeweled reliquaries, splinters of wood said to be from the true cross, a vial of oil from a lamp that burned at a saint's tomb. The emperor receives these gifts with particular reverence, signaling to a priest who comes forward to accept them, to carry them away to whatever chapel or treasury they will be stored in. The audience ends. The emperor rises slowly, stiffly, his own body surely as tired as yours from hours of immobility. Courtiers bow deeply, guards remain at attention. The emperor processes toward the southern apse, toward the silver door that leads to his private chambers. You remain in position until he has passed through the door, until it closes behind him, until the threat of public vulnerability has ended. Only then do you move. Only then do you allow yourself to breathe fully, to roll your shoulders slightly, to shift your weight without concern for how it might appear. The other guards are doing the same, subtle movements of relief, small acknowledgments of the pain that has been accumulating for hours. The hall empties slowly. Courtiers file out through various doors, returning to their offices or chambers. Servants enter to collect the gifts, to clean the marble floor, to prepare the space for whatever ceremony will be held here next. You and the other guards withdraw to the vestibule, where an officer checks you off on his wooden tablet, marking that your duty in the throne room is complete. You walk back to your station through corridors that seem almost spacious after the confinement of standing in one place for so long. Your legs are stiff, your back is tight, but you have survived another day of ceremonial duty, another performance in the endless theater of Byzantine power. The emperor lives, the ambassadors have offered their gifts, and you have stood stone still, a guardian made of flesh and will, protecting the throne from dangers that never came but might have if you had not been there. When the emperor retires to his private chambers, you follow at a distance, not close enough to intrude, but close enough to kill anyone who tries. The corridor outside the imperial quarters is narrower than those in the public areas, more intimate, designed for privacy rather than ceremony. The walls here are still decorated, mosaics of saints and angels watch from every surface, but the scale is smaller, more human. This is where the emperor becomes a man, where the weight of the purple can be set aside, if only for a few hours. You stand in an alcove, positioned so that you can see both the door to the emperor's chambers and the corridor that leads to them. The Swedish guard is at the far end of the hall, near the entrance to the empress's quarters. Two other guards patrol the outer corridor, moving in a slow circuit that brings them past your position every quarter hour. The coverage is complete. No one can approach the emperor without passing through multiple layers of observation. But observation is not the same as intrusion. You learn to read faces, to sense danger in a sideways glance or a hesitant step. Palace intrigue is everywhere: whispered plots, poisoned wine, hired blades. The Byzantine court is a place where emperors are made and unmade, where power shifts like sand, where a man can go to sleep as the emperor's favorite and wake as a corpse dumped in the Bosphorus. The history of this place is written in blood as much as gold. A eunuch approaches. You recognize him. He serves in the imperial bedchamber, one of the few people allowed to enter when the emperor wishes for privacy. His face is familiar, his gait unhurried. He carries a silver tray with a wine jug and 2 cups. You watch him carefully. The tray, the jug, the cups, his hands, his eyes, everything. He notices your attention. Most people would look away, uncomfortable under such scrutiny. But this eunuch has worked in the palace for decades. He is accustomed to being watched. He nods slightly as he passes, acknowledging your presence without breaking stride. You nod back barely, just enough to show that you have assessed him and found no immediate threat. He knocks softly on the emperor's door. A voice from within, you cannot make out the words, and the door opens. The eunuch enters, the door closes. You return your attention to the corridor, to the shadows, to the constant calculation of threat and response that fills every moment of this duty. Your eyes catch everything. The servant who lingers too long near a doorway, her basket of linens held awkwardly as if its weight is unfamiliar. The courtier who avoids your gaze as he passes, his hands hidden in the folds of his robe. The priest who walks these halls at an odd hour, his prayers audible but his destination unclear. You file it all away, a living ledger of potential threats. Most of the time there is nothing. Most servants are simply servants. Most courtiers are simply courtiers. Most priests are simply priests, going about their duties in a palace that never truly sleeps. But you cannot assume. Assumption is death. In the Byzantine court, an assassin can wear any face, carry any credentials, speak any prayer. The corridor is quiet now. Evening has deepened into night. Oil lamps burn in their sconces, casting pools of yellow light that leave the spaces between in shadow. You stand in one of those shadows, not hiding exactly, but not drawing attention to yourself either. The art of being a palace guard is the art of presence without intrusion, of menace without aggression. You are a reminder, a warning, a promise of violence that need never be fulfilled if everyone remembers that you are here. A door opens somewhere down the corridor. Footsteps approach. You tense slightly, hand moving closer to your axe handle, eyes focusing on the corner where the footsteps will appear. A figure rounds the corner. Another guard, one of the night patrol, making his rounds. He sees you, nods, continues past. You relax fractionally. The emperor's door opens again. The eunuch emerges, carrying the tray, now empty. He closes the door carefully, quietly, then walks back down the corridor toward wherever he came from. You watch him until he disappears around the corner. Still nothing suspicious. Still just the normal functioning of the palace, the machinery of power turning smoothly through the night. But you have seen things. In 3 years of service, you have seen enough to know that smooth functioning is an illusion, that beneath the surface of ceremony and order, the palace seethes with ambition and fear. You have seen courtiers disappear, their names unspoken afterward, their rooms reassigned to others who ask no questions. You have seen servants arrested in the middle of the night, dragged away to dungeons or worse. You have seen officials rise suddenly in favor, then fall just as suddenly, their fortunes tied to alliances you do not fully understand. The politics of the Byzantine court are Byzantine in more than name. Layers upon layers of intrigue, alliances that shift like water, hatreds that burn for generations, all of it conducted with exquisite politeness, with elaborate courtesy, with smiles that hide daggers. You do not understand it all. You are not meant to. You are a barbarian, after all, a Northman hired for your loyalty and your acts, not for your ability to navigate the subtle currents of court intrigue. But you learn anyway. You learn to recognize the signs. The courtier whose hands tremble slightly when he passes the emperor. The official who drinks too much wine at feasts, whose tongue loosens, who speaks of things that should remain unspoken. The servant whose loyalties have been purchased with gold or threats, who carries messages between parties that should not be communicating. You learn and you remember. Sometimes you report what you see to the captain of the guard, who passes the information to the emperor or his advisors. Sometimes the information is acted upon, sometimes it is not. You do not always know the outcome. You are a piece in a game whose rules you only partly understand. A rat scurries along the base of the wall, moving quickly through the shadows. You watch it with a small part of your attention. The palace is full of rats, despite the efforts of servants and cats to keep them controlled. They live in the walls, in the foundations, in the endless network of passages and storage rooms that honeycomb the palace structure. Sometimes you wonder if the rats know the palace better than you do, if they have their own maps of secret routes and hidden spaces. The night deepens, the palace grows quieter. Somewhere bells ring the hour, you have lost count of which hour it is. Midnight perhaps, or later. Your shift will end at dawn when the next rotation of guards arrives to take your place. Until then you stand, you watch, you wait. A sound, soft, barely audible. You focus on it, head tilting slightly to catch the direction. Footsteps approaching from the outer corridor. Not the regular patrol, you know their rhythm, their timing, someone else. Your hand closes on the axe handle. Not drawing it yet, but ready. The Swedish guard at the far end of the corridor has heard it too. You can see his silhouette shift, his body angling toward the sound. A figure appears, hooded, moving quickly but not running. Your muscles tense. This is wrong. No one should be in this corridor at this hour, moving like that. The figure sees you, stops abruptly. For a moment, no one moves. Then the figure pulls back the hood. A palace official, one you recognize, his face pale with fear or urgency. Message for the emperor, he says in Greek, holding up a sealed document. Urgent news from the eastern frontier. You do not speak Greek fluently, but you understand enough. You gesture for him to wait, then knock on the emperor's door 3 sharp raps, the signal for urgent business. A pause, then the door opens slightly. You explain in your halting Greek that an official has urgent news. The voice from within tells you to admit him. You step aside. The official enters. The door closes. You return to your position, hand still resting on your axe, adrenaline still flowing through your veins. False alarm, perhaps, or perhaps not. You will not know unless something happens, unless the message contains news that changes something, that sets other events in motion. This is the work. Watching, waiting, reading every gesture, every expression, every deviation from the normal pattern. Most of the time you are watching nothing. Most of the time the threats are imagined, the dangers theoretical. But that one time when they are not, that one moment when an assassin actually appears, when poison actually finds its way into wine, when a knife actually appears from beneath a robe, that one time justifies all the other times, all the hours of vigilance, all the weight of constant attention. The official emerges after a few minutes, his face revealing nothing. He bows to you, an unexpected courtesy from a Greek to a barbarian guard, then hurries back down the corridor. You watch him until he disappears. The emperor's door remains closed. Whatever news arrived from the east, it is not your concern beyond ensuring that the messenger was legitimate, that the document was not a ruse, that no threat accompanied the information. The Swedish guard resumes his position. You resume yours. The palace returns to its nighttime quiet, the silence broken only by the occasional distant sound, a door closing, footsteps on stone, the cry of a night bird somewhere in the gardens. You stand in shadow, watching the corridor with eyes that see everything, recording everything, forgetting nothing. This is the art you have learned. the art of watching without being seen, of knowing without speaking, of protecting without intruding. You are the emperor's eyes, his shield, his final line of defense against the palace that surrounds him, that glitters with gold and seethes with danger in equal measure. The night stretches ahead. You do not move, you do not rest, you watch. The emperor dines in splendor. Roasted peacock, its tail feathers replaced after cooking so the bird seems almost alive on its golden platter. Honeyed figs glazed until they shine like amber. Wine so dark it looks like blood, poured from ewers of chased silver into cups of Byzantine glass. You stand at the edge of the hall, watching, while nobles laugh and musicians play. The smell makes your stomach growl, but you don't eat, you don't drink, you don't sit, you're not a guest. You're a guardian, and the price of your vigilance is hunger, thirst, and aching feet. The banquet hall is one of the smaller reception rooms in the palace, designed for intimate gatherings rather than state occasions. Perhaps 40 people recline on couches arranged in a horseshoe around the perimeter of the room, leaving the center open for servants and entertainers. The emperor sits at the head, slightly elevated, his couch draped in purple silk. To his right, the patriarch of Constantinople, his white beard carefully combed, his vestments heavy with embroidered crosses. To his left, a visiting dignitary from somewhere in the west, uncomfortable in borrowed Byzantine finery. You stand behind the emperor, far enough back not to intrude on the conversation, close enough to move quickly if needed. The Swedish guard stands at the entrance to the hall. Your countryman is positioned near the kitchens, watching the stream of servants who carry dishes back and forth. The ruse warrior patrols the corridor outside, completing the invisible net of security that surrounds the emperor even during moments of pleasure. A servant approaches the emperor's couch, bearing a platter of fish. Sturgeon, you think, though you are not certain. The flesh is white and delicate, seasoned with herbs you cannot name, swimming in a sauce that catches the lamplight like liquid gold. The emperor selects a portion with practiced grace, his movements economical, refined. The fish is transferred to his plate, fine ceramic, decorated with images of saints. Your stomach clenches. You have not eaten since midday, a hurried meal of bread and cheese consumed in the guards' quarters between shifts. That was 6 hours ago, perhaps 7. The feast before you represents more food than you would eat in a week, displayed and consumed with casual abundance. More dishes arrive, whole chickens roasted until their skin is crisp and golden. Lamb cooked with honey and garum, that fermented fish sauce the Greeks love and you have never learned to appreciate. Eggs prepared as sfougata, the famous Byzantine omelets, spongy and rich with cheese and herbs. Platters of fresh bread, the finest wheat flour, no other grains mixed in, bread so white it seems to glow. The nobles eat with their hands, reaching into communal dishes, tearing bread to soak up sauces, licking their fingers without shame. There are no forks at this feast, though you have heard that some Byzantine households use them. Here in this traditional gathering, hands are sufficient. The emperor eats more delicately than his guests, but he too uses his fingers, selecting morsels with careful precision. Wine flows continuously. Servants move through the hall with ewers, refilling cups before they can empty. The wine is from Macedonia, someone says loudly, the finest vintage from the emperor's own estates. The guests praise it extravagantly, holding their cups to the light, admiring the deep red color, commenting on the aroma, the flavor, the exquisite balance of sweetness and acidity. Your mouth is dry. You have been standing for hours, breathing air thick with the smell of roasted meat and spiced wine, and you have consumed nothing but your own saliva. There is water in the guards' quarters, a jug kept for the purpose, but you cannot leave your post to drink it. Not while the emperor dines, not while he is vulnerable, surrounded by guests who might be friends or might be enemies wearing friendly masks. A musician plays the lyre in the corner of the hall, his fingers dancing across the strings, producing melodies that weave through the conversation like threads of silver. Another musician accompanies him on a flute, the two instruments complementing each other, creating harmonies that seem almost solid, almost visible in the lamplight. The guests grow louder as the wine works its magic. Laughter erupts at one end of the hall, then spreads like fire, everyone laughing though most of them probably didn't hear the joke that prompted it. The emperor smiles but does not laugh. He maintains his dignity even in relaxation, even among friends and courtiers who have known him for years. More food. A boar's head brought in on a massive platter, garnished with apples and herbs, its tusks gilded. The guests applaud. The emperor nods his approval. The boar is carved at a side table, the meat distributed among the couches, servants moving efficiently through the cramped space between furniture and guests. Sweets arrive. Honey cakes dripping with syrup, nuts embedded in their surface like jewels. Placuntas, the layered pastry filled with cheese or nuts or both, ancestors of desserts that will be perfected centuries hence. Fresh fruit, figs and grapes and apples, depending on the season, arranged in pyramids on silver plates. The smell of honey fills the hall, sweet and cloying, mixing with the savory aromas of meat and fish and cheese. Your stomach protests audibly, a low growl that you hope is covered by the music and conversation. The Swedish guard at the entrance catches your eye. Something passes between you, sympathy, perhaps, or shared suffering. He is as hungry as you are. You are all hungry. This is part of the duty. Some guards break. They sneak bites when they think no one is watching, accept food from sympathetic servants, lose focus for crucial moments while their attention is divided between vigilance and appetite. Those guards don't last long. They are reassigned to other duties, less prestigious, less well paid. Or they make mistakes, fail to notice threats, and then they are simply gone, their positions filled by men who understand that discipline is not negotiable. You don't break, you stand, hand resting on your axe handle, eyes scanning the room continuously. The emperor, the guests, the servants, the musicians, the shadows in the corners where lamplight doesn't reach. Every face, every gesture, every movement is catalogued, assessed, filed away for future reference. A guest rises from his couch, unsteady on his feet. Too much wine. He stumbles slightly, catches himself on the edge of a table, laughs at his own clumsiness. The other guests laugh with him, good-natured mockery that the drunk man accepts with exaggerated bows. You watch him carefully. Drunk men are unpredictable. Drunk men do things they would never do sober, speak truths better left unspoken, reveal secrets, act on impulses they normally control. But this man only makes his way to the emperor's couch, where he kneels, not quite prostrating himself, but showing respect, and offers some slurred compliment that makes the emperor smile. A servant helps the drunk man back to his couch. The feast continues. The hall grows warmer as the evening progresses. 40 bodies, oil lamps, braziers burning in corners to ward off the night chill. All of it combines to create a thick, humid atmosphere that smells of wine and sweat and perfume and food. You can feel perspiration on your forehead, on your back beneath the male shirt, but you don't wipe it away. Movement draws attention. Stillness is your armor as much as the iron you wear. More wine, more laughter. A guest begins to sing, his voice rough but enthusiastic, and others join in, creating a chorus that has more passion than skill. The emperor listens with patient courtesy, nodding along to the rhythm, occasionally joining in on refrains he knows. Your legs ache, your back aches. Your feet, compressed in leather boots for 12 hours now, are numb in some places and screaming in others. But you remain standing, weight shifting minutely from foot to foot in the slow dance that allows you to endure what would otherwise be unendurable. The feast has been going for 3 hours, perhaps 4. Time is difficult to measure when your world has contracted to this single room, these faces, this relentless assault of sights and smells that remind you of everything you cannot have. Finally, mercifully, the emperor rises. The gesture is subtle, but everyone recognizes it. The feast is ending. Guests scramble to their feet, bowing as the emperor makes his way toward the door. You step back, giving him space, then fall into position behind him, ready to follow him to wherever he goes next. The Swedish guard opens the door. The emperor passes through. You follow, leaving behind the warmth and noise and overwhelming sensory abundance of the banquet hall. The corridor outside is cool and quiet, a relief after hours in that overheated space. The emperor walks slowly, perhaps as tired as you are, though he shows it differently. Servants trail behind, dismissed with a gesture. He wants solitude, or as much solitude as an emperor can have. You maintain your distance, allowing him the illusion of privacy while remaining close enough to intervene if danger appears. He reaches his private chambers. The door opens, closes, and you are once again standing watch in the corridor, alone with the Swedish guard who takes position at the other end of the hall. Silence descends. Your shift will end soon. Another hour, perhaps 2, and the morning rotation will arrive to relieve you. Then you can return to your quarters, remove your armor, sit down, and eat whatever cold food is left from the guard's evening meal. Your stomach growls again, louder now in the quiet corridor. You ignore it. This is the price. This is what it means to be a guardian of the emperor, to stand in the presence of abundance and consume nothing, to watch feasts you cannot join. to smell food you cannot taste, to maintain discipline while your body protests, while every instinct screams for you to break ranks, to accept that offered morsel, to drink that cup of wine. But discipline is what separates the Varangian guard from ordinary soldiers. Discipline is what makes you valuable, what keeps you in this position, what ensures that the gold keeps flowing into your purse. So you stand hungry and thirsty and tired, and you wait for your relief to arrive, knowing that tomorrow you will do this again, that every feast is the same feast, that this is simply the work. The corridor is empty, the palace sleeps. And you remain, a guardian who cannot taste the feast he protects, standing watch through the hours of darkness. Not all threats come from the front. The palace is riddled with secret passages, hidden staircases, and forgotten tunnels. Centuries of construction and reconstruction have created a labyrinth within a labyrinth, spaces that exist between the official architecture, routes known only to servants who have worked here for decades, to eunuchs who keep the palace's secrets, to guards who patrol the darkness. You're taught to patrol them, to memorize their routes, to know which doors lead to safety and which to danger. The order comes during your evening shift. Patrol the lower passages, the service tunnels that run beneath the ceremonial halls like veins beneath skin. You descend a staircase that most courtiers never see, stone steps worn into curves by centuries of feet. The walls here plain and functional, stripped of mosaics and marble, revealing the palace's skeleton. The ruse warrior accompanies you, his lamp casting moving shadows that make the walls seem to breathe. The air grows colder as you descend, damper, the smell changes, less incense and perfume, more stone and earth, and the faint mineral tang of water seeping through ancient mortar. These passages were built on terraces carved into the hillside, vaults and substructures supporting the weight of the palace above. Sometimes you can hear footsteps overhead, muffled by layers of stone, courtiers walking in their gilded world while you move through the darkness beneath. A corridor branches left and right. You take the left fork, following the mental map you've constructed over months of patrols. The passage narrows, the ceiling lowers. You can touch both walls if you extend your arms. Your axe scrapes against stone as you adjust its position. The ruse warrior's lamp flickers, casting your shadow enormous against the wall ahead. You pass storage rooms, their doors heavy wood reinforced with iron. Behind them, grain, oil, wine, all the supplies necessary to keep the palace functioning. Some doors are locked, some stand open, revealing dim spaces stacked with amphoras and barrels. A rat scurries across your path, disappears into a crack in the wall. Where there are rats, there is access to the outside, gaps in the palace's armor that could theoretically be exploited by someone small enough, desperate enough. A staircase ascends. You climb it, emerging into another corridor, this one slightly wider, slightly better maintained. Servant passages, used daily by the staff who keep the palace running. You can tell by the worn centers of the steps, by the oil stains on the walls where lamps have been hung for years. Sometimes you find nothing. Most patrols are routine, uneventful walks through empty passages where the only sounds are your own footsteps and the occasional scurry of rats. But you remain alert. Complacency is death. The moment you stop paying attention is the moment something happens. A sound ahead, footsteps, not the confident stride of a guard or the hurried scurry of a servant going about legitimate business. Something else, hesitant, furtive, you stop. The ruse warrior stops behind you, shielding his lamp with his hand to reduce its glow. The footsteps continue, growing closer. You press yourself against the wall, hand on your axe handle, ready to draw it in one smooth motion. A figure appears around the corner, hooded, moving cautiously, carrying something, a bundle wrapped in cloth. He sees you too late, freezes, his body language radiating panic. Stop, you say in Greek, the word harsh in your northern accent. The figure doesn't stop. He turns, tries to run. You move faster. 3 strides close the distance. Your hand shoots out, grabs his shoulder, spins him around. The hood falls back. A young face, terrified, Greek or Armenian, hard to tell in the lamplight. A servant, judging by his clothing. The bundle falls, hits the floor with a metallic sound. The ruse warrior brings the lamp closer. You bend, unwrap the cloth with your free hand while keeping your grip on the servant's shoulder. A knife. Long blade, well made, the type carried by guards, not servants. And a purse, heavy with coins, more money than a palace servant would earn in a year. The servant is shaking now, words tumbling from his mouth in rapid Greek, too fast for you to follow. Excuses, probably, explanations, lies, it doesn't matter. The knife tells the story. The purse confirms it. Someone paid this man to carry a weapon through the palace's secret passages to deliver it to someone who shouldn't have it. Sometimes you find assassins. Tonight you find a nervous servant with a knife and a purse of gold. He begs, his hands clasped together in supplication, tears running down his face, voice rising to a wail that echoes off the stone walls. You don't listen, your orders are clear. Anyone found in unauthorized areas with weapons, anyone who flees from guards, anyone whose presence cannot be immediately explained, they are threats to be neutralized. Your axe falls once, clean and final. The servant's cry cuts off mid-breath. His body crumples, blood pooling on the stone floor, spreading slowly toward the walls. The ruse warrior steps back to avoid the blood reaching his boots. You stand over the body, breathing slowly, feeling the adrenaline that flooded your system begin to ebb. The axe is heavy in your hand. Blood runs down the blade, drips onto the floor with soft sounds that seem loud in the sudden silence. This is not the first time you've killed in these passages. It will not be the last. The ruse warrior speaks in his language, a question. You nod toward the body. He understands. He sets down his lamp and grabs the corpse by the ankles. You take the shoulders. Together, you drag it down the corridor, away from the main passage, into a side room used for storage. The body will be found eventually. Palace servants will clean up the blood, remove the corpse, report the incident to whoever needs to know. By tomorrow, it will be as if nothing happened. The body is removed before dawn. Not by you, that's someone else's job. You return to your patrol, wiping blood from your axe with a cloth you carry for this purpose, the blade clean again within minutes, ready for whatever comes next. The Emperor never knows how close death came. That's the point. Your job is to intercept threats before they reach the levels where emperors live, before they penetrate the inner rings of security. The servant with the knife, was he bringing it to an assassin hiding in the palace? Was he the assassin himself, paid to kill some official or courtier? You'll never know. The investigation will happen without you, conducted by palace officials who specialize in uncovering plots. You continue the patrol. More corridors, more stairs, more passages that branch and twist through the palace's foundations. The ruse warrior follows, his lamp steady now, his breathing calm. He has seen death before, you all have. This is the work. A door stands ajar that should be locked. You approach carefully, push it open with your foot, ready for whatever might be inside. Nothing. Just an empty room, bare stone walls, no windows. Someone was careless with the lock, that's all. But you file it away, which door, which room, what time of night. Everything might be significant, everything must be remembered. You check other doors, most are locked. Some open onto storage rooms, servant quarters, workshops where palace craftsmen work during the day repairing furniture, mending clothing, maintaining the endless infrastructure that keeps this place functioning. All empty now. All quiet, the patrol takes 2 hours, maybe 3. Time is difficult to measure in these windowless passages where lamplight is the only illumination, where one corridor looks much like another. But eventually, you've traced the entire route, checked all the key points, confirmed that no other threats lurk in the darkness. You ascend stairs that bring you back to the inhabited levels, emerging into a corridor near the guards' quarters. The air here is warmer, touched with the smell of lamp oil and human habitation. The ruse warrior extinguishes his lamp. Daylight is beginning to filter through windows somewhere above, the palace beginning to wake. You return to your station, take up your position in the corridor you've been assigned to guard. The Swedish guard is already there, standing at the far end, silent and still. He nods as you approach. You nod back. Another patrol complete. Another threat eliminated. Another night of vigilance that passed mostly in darkness and silence, punctuated by brief moments of violence that will leave no trace by evening. Your axe hangs at your shoulder, clean and ready. Your hands are washed. You stopped at a fountain in one of the courtyards, rinsed away the blood that had splattered on your skin. The servant's face is already fading from your memory, becoming just another face in the long sequence of people you've killed or watched die during your service. This is the work, the secret doors and hidden knives, the passages that exist between the official palace and the real palace, the threats that come from below, from the darkness, from the spaces where oversight is difficult and danger can gather unseen. You patrol them, you watch them, and when you find something wrong, you correct it with axe and sword, with the swift violence that keeps the palace safe and the emperor alive. The corridor is quiet, morning light grows stronger, and you stand, weapon ready, waiting for whatever the new day will bring. The palace quiets, candles are snuffed, silk curtains are drawn, The emperor retires to his bedchamber, surrounded by guards, eunuchs, and locked doors. But sleep doesn't come for you. You stand outside his door or patrol the outer walls or sit in a guardroom sharpening your blade. The night shift is the hardest. Every shadow moves. Every sound is a threat. You fight exhaustion with cold water, with prayers, with the knowledge that if you fail, the empire itself might fall. The transition from evening to night watch happens gradually. The day guards depart in pairs and small groups, heading to their quarters to eat, to rest, to sleep if they can. You remain. Your shift doesn't end when the sun sets. Your shift ends when the morning rotation arrives, when dawn breaks over the city and the palace begins to stir again. Until then, the darkness is yours to endure. You stand in the corridor outside the emperor's bedchamber. The door is closed, heavy oak reinforced with bronze, its hinges oiled so it opens silently when needed. Behind it, the emperor sleeps, or tries to sleep, in a room you've never seen, attended by eunuchs whose loyalty has been purchased with position and privilege. Other guards are positioned at intervals. One at the far end of this corridor, one at the staircase that leads to this level, two more patrolling the outer perimeter. The lamps have been dimmed, not extinguished. The palace is never truly dark, but reduced to low flames that cast more shadow than light. The corridor feels different at night, larger somehow, as if the darkness expands the space, makes the walls recede, turns familiar architecture into something strange and uncertain. Your countryman stands with you tonight, positioned against the opposite wall where he can watch the corridor from a different angle. Neither of you speaks. Speech is unnecessary, and besides, silence is part of the discipline. The palace sleeps. You do not disturb its rest. Time moves strangely during night watch. Minutes stretch into hours. Hours compress into moments. You cannot trust your sense of duration when there are no external markers, no bells ringing the hours, no footsteps passing to indicate the flow of time. You exist in a suspended state, alert but dreamlike, your mind hovering somewhere between wakefulness and the exhaustion that pulls constantly at your consciousness. Your eyes burn. You've been awake since yesterday's dawn, worked through the full day, and now you face the long night ahead. Sleep deprivation is part of the work, especially during busy periods when the palace requires extra security, when threats are rumored, when the emperor's schedule demands guards at all hours without regard for human limitations. You blink deliberately, forcing moisture into your dry eyes. You shift your weight, feeling the protest from your legs, your back, your shoulders where the mail shirt has been pressing for nearly 20 hours. But you remain standing. You remain alert. This is the test. Not your skill with weapons, not your strength or speed, but your ability to endure, to push past the body's demands for rest, to function when every instinct screams for sleep. A sound, soft, distant. You focus on it, head tilting slightly, trying to identify the source. Footsteps perhaps, or the wind moving through the palace's countless passages, or nothing. Sometimes the palace makes sounds for no reason, stone settling, wood creaking, the building itself breathing through the hours of darkness. Your countryman has heard it too. You can see his silhouette shift, his attention focusing in the same direction as yours. Both of you wait, hands near weapons, ready to move if the sound resolves into threat. But it fades or changes or was never there at all. You relax fractionally. False alarm. The night shift is full of false alarms. Shadows that move in lamplight, sounds that seem sinister until identified. The constant low-level anxiety that comes from knowing that real threats could appear at any moment and look exactly like these phantom ones. You cannot let exhaustion dull your vigilance. You cannot dismiss every strange sound as nothing. The one time you do, the one time you shrug and assume there's no danger, that will be the time when danger is real. You think about sleep. Not about sleeping, that would be dangerous, might actually cause you to drift off, but about the concept of sleep, the abstract idea of rest that awaits you at the end of this shift. You're caught in the guard's quarters, the rough blanket, the few hours of oblivion before you're awakened for the next rotation. It seems impossibly distant, a paradise you can barely remember, though you were there just yesterday morning. A door opens somewhere down the corridor. You tense, hand closing on your axe handle. A eunuch emerges from the emperor's chamber, carrying a covered chamber pot. He sees you watching, nods respectfully, continues on his way toward whatever privy he's heading to. You recognize him, one of the regular attendants, a man who's been in imperial service for 20 years. No threat. You release the axe handle, return your hand to its resting position. The eunuch returns a few minutes later, the chamber pot now empty. He slips back into the emperor's chamber. The door closes with a soft sound. Silence returns. You patrol. Not far, just to the end of the corridor and back. A circuit that takes perhaps 5 minutes, designed to keep blood flowing, to prevent the dangerous stillness that comes from standing in one position for too long. Your countryman remains at his post while you walk, his eyes following your movement, maintaining coverage of the space. When you return, he will take his turn, walking the same circuit while you stand watch. The corridor stretches ahead, empty and silent. Your boots make soft sounds on the marble, the only noise in a palace that houses thousands but seems deserted now, all those thousands sleeping behind closed doors, dreaming their dreams while you walk through darkness. You pass a window. Outside, Constantinople spreads below the palace hill, a vast darkness punctuated by scattered lights. Torches on city walls, lamps in taverns that serve through the night, fires burning in harbors where ships unload cargo that cannot wait for dawn. The city never truly sleeps, even when the palace does. Somewhere down there, guards like you stand watch at gates and walls, keeping the city safe while its inhabitants rest. You return to your position. Your countryman nods, then begins his own patrol, walking the same route you just traced. You watch him go, watch him return, the rhythm of the night watch continuing, footsteps and silence, alertness and exhaustion, the long, slow passage of hours that refuse to move at normal speed. Cold water waits in a small fountain at the intersection of 2 corridors. You walk there during your next patrol, bend, splash water on your face, drink deeply from cupped hands. The cold shocks you awake, drives back the fog that has been creeping into your mind. You straighten, water dripping from your beard, feeling slightly more human, slightly more capable of enduring the hours still ahead. You pray sometimes during these long nights. Not aloud, never aloud, but silently, words directed at gods whose names you learned as a child, before Christianity reached your village, before the world became complicated with competing deities and conflicting loyalties. Thor, Odin, the old ones who watched over warriors, who understood the particular exhaustion of standing guard through darkness, who might offer strength to those who ask. Whether they hear, whether they answer, you cannot say. But the prayers help anyway, giving structure to time, something to do with the part of your mind not occupied with watching. The knowledge presses on you sometimes, the weight of responsibility. If you fail, the empire itself might fall. That's not hyperbole. Byzantine history is full of murdered emperors, of dynasties ended by a blade in the night, of empires that changed course because a guard fell asleep or looked away at the wrong moment. The man sleeping behind that door is the center around which everything revolves. Government, military, church, all of it dependent on his continued existence. And you're part of the thin line that keeps him alive. Your countryman yawns, catches himself, shakes his head sharply as if to dislodge sleep. You understand. The exhaustion is overwhelming now, in the deepest part of night when the body's rhythms demand rest, when staying awake feels like fighting against nature itself. But you fight, you both fight, because the alternative is unthinkable. More hours pass, or minutes. You've lost the ability to judge. The corridor exists in a timeless space where nothing changes, where every moment is identical to the one before and the one after. You stand, you watch, you fight the weight of your own eyelids, the desperate need to close them to rest, to surrender to sleep. Finally, the first gray light of dawn begins to seep through distant windows. The palace remains quiet, but it's a different quiet now, anticipatory rather than dormant, the building preparing to wake. Your shift is almost over, just a little longer, just until the morning guards arrive to relieve you. Footsteps approach, the day rotation arriving precisely on schedule. You've never been more grateful to see anyone. The Swedish guard leads them, fresh and rested, his eyes clear, his stance steady. He nods to you. You nod back, relief flooding through you like warm water. Anything? He asks in Norse. Quiet night, you reply, your voice rough from hours of disuse. He takes your position. You step away, your countrymen joining you, both of you moving like old men, stiff and slow, bodies protesting after 20 hours of duty. But you're done. Your watch is over. The emperor has survived another night, and you can finally rest. You walk toward the guards' quarters, each step bringing you closer to sleep. The palace is waking around you, servants moving through corridors, priests heading to morning prayers, the machinery of imperial power beginning another day. But you're moving in the opposite direction, away from wakefulness, toward the oblivion you've been craving for hours. Sleep, when it comes, is immediate and total. You barely remember removing your armor, pulling off your boots, collapsing onto your cot. Darkness takes you, and for a few hours at least, you are free from the burden of vigilance, from the weight of protecting an empire that never rests. You're paid well: gold coins, land grants, and the emperor's favor. The Varangian guard receives wages far exceeding those of ordinary Byzantine soldiers, compensation that reflects both the danger of the work and the emperor's need to ensure absolute loyalty from men who stand so close to him. Every month, a palace official appears in the guard's quarters with a ledger and a locked chest, calling names, distributing coins that are weighed rather than counted. The gold is real and heavy, stamped with the emperor's image, accepted anywhere in the civilized world. But the cost is high. You've left your homeland, your family, your language behind. The village where you were born, wooden halls, fishing boats pulled up on gravel beaches, the smell of pine and salt and wood smoke, exists now only in memory, growing vaguer with each passing year. Your mother's face, your father's voice, the name of the girl you might have married if you had stayed, all of it fading, replaced by marble corridors and Greek voices and the weight of armor you wear more hours than you don't. 3 years you've been here. 3 years of standing guard, patrolling passages, watching faces for signs of treachery. 3 years of converting your life into gold coins that accumulate in a locked chest beneath your cot. A chest that grows heavier with each monthly payment, but somehow never seems heavy enough to justify what you've given up to fill it. You've seen comrades fall to poison, to blades, to the slow rot of palace politics. The Swedish guard who stood beside you during your first month of service, he's gone now, killed during a patrol when assassins appeared from a hidden passage and attacked before anyone could react. You remember helping to carry his body out of the palace, blood trailing behind, his eyes still open in surprise. He was 23 years old. The Dane who taught you the routes through the lower passages, he's gone too, though not to violence. He drank too much wine at a feast, spoke too freely about something he'd seen, something involving a courtier's wife and a eunuch chamberlain. Within a week, he was reassigned to a frontier garrison in Anatolia, as far from Constantinople as the empire extends. You never saw him again. Sometimes reassignment is just reassignment. Sometimes it's a death sentence with travel time built in. You've killed men who begged for mercy. The servant with the knife is not the only one. There have been others. A courtier who reached for something in his robe. You struck before he could draw whatever it was, your axe splitting his skull, and only afterward did you discover he'd been reaching for a handkerchief, not a weapon. A drunk who wandered into a restricted corridor late at night, too intoxicated to understand your warnings, too aggressive when you tried to turn him away. Your sword found his throat before his hands found yours. Were they threats? Were they innocent? You'll never know. The moment of decision comes so fast that there's no time for investigation, no time for questions. You see danger or what might be danger, and you respond with the violence you were hired to deliver. Better to kill an innocent man than let a guilty one reach the emperor. That's the calculus. That's what loyalty means in this place. You've stood silent while innocents were dragged away. Palace guards don't intervene in palace politics. You watch. You remember, but you don't act unless the emperor or his direct representatives give the order. So when the palace guards, not Varangians, but Greeks loyal to some faction you don't understand, came to arrest a courtier and his entire household in the middle of the night, you stood at your post and did nothing. The courtier's wife screamed. His children cried. Servants begged for mercy. And you stood, hand on your axe, watching it happen, because intervening would mean choosing a side in conflicts whose rules you don't fully understand. The courtier was executed 2 days later, beheaded in one of the palace courtyards, his head displayed briefly as a warning before being removed. You heard he had been plotting against the emperor, or against someone close to the emperor, or had simply become inconvenient to someone with enough influence to have him killed. The truth is buried somewhere in the labyrinth of Byzantine intrigue, and you are not invited to search for it. Loyalty to the emperor means loyalty above all else, above morality, above friendship, above your own soul. The oath you swore when you joined the guard was simple in its words, but infinite in its implications. You swore to protect the emperor with your life, to obey his commands without question, to place his safety above every other consideration. The oath didn't mention the cost. It didn't explain what it would feel like to become an instrument, a weapon wielded by a power structure you can observe but never truly be part of. Some nights, you wonder if it's worth it. The gold beneath your cot weighs perhaps 20 pounds now, enough to buy land back home, to build a hall, to marry well and live comfortably for years. But you're not home. You're here in this palace, in this foreign city, speaking a language that still feels awkward in your mouth, eating food that still tastes wrong, living among people who will never see you as anything other than a useful barbarian. The promise that keeps men standing guard through darkness, that keeps you accepting the monthly wages, is palutasvov, the palace pillaging. When an emperor dies, before the succession is secured, the Varangian guard has the ancient right to run to the imperial treasury and take as much gold and as many gems as they can carry. Men have returned to Scandinavia with fortunes that made them wealthy beyond the dreams of kings. That's the prize at the end. That's what justifies the years of service, the accumulated violence, the slow erosion of whatever you were before you became this. But emperors don't die on schedules convenient to guards. The current emperor is young, healthy, likely to rule for decades. You could be an old man before Palutasvov comes, if it comes at all. And even then, you'll be competing with dozens of other guards, all running toward the same treasury, all grabbing what they can in the chaos before order is restored. There are no guarantees, just hope and gold and the weight of choices that can never be unmade. Your countryman understands. He's been here longer than you, 5 years of service, 5 years of accumulating gold and regrets in equal measure. Sometimes, during the quiet moments between shifts, you talk in Norse, the language of home that sounds strange now after so much time speaking Greek. He tells you about his wife, left behind in a village whose name you recognize, a woman who might still be waiting or might have remarried by now. He sends money back when he can, through merchants who travel north, but he hasn't seen her in 5 years and doesn't know if the money arrives or if she's even alive. Was it worth it? You asked him once, late at night in the guards' quarters, both of you too tired to sleep, too awake to rest. He didn't answer for a long time. Then, ask me when I'm home if I get home. That's the uncertainty. That's what gnaws at you during the long hours of standing watch. You might die here. Violence, disease, accident, any of them could end you before you see your homeland again. The Swedish guard certainly didn't expect to die at 23. The servants you've killed didn't wake up planning to die that day. Death comes without warning in the palace, dressed in silk or hidden in shadows, and when it comes there's rarely time to prepare, to make peace, to say the prayers that might ease your passage to whatever lies beyond. But the alternative, returning home with nothing, with no gold to show for the years away, no status earned, no transformation from farmer's son to someone who mattered, that seems worse somehow. So you stay, you collect your wages. You kill when necessary, you stand silent when you should perhaps speak. You become, slowly, something different from what you were, something harder and colder and more efficient at violence. Loyalty to the emperor, loyalty bought with gold. Loyalty maintained through discipline, and the knowledge that breaking it would mean death or worse. You are a Varangian guard. You stand between the emperor and the world, and the price of that standing is everything you were before you put on the mail shirt and picked up the axe. Some nights you wonder if there's anything left of that former self. If you went home tomorrow, would they recognize you? Would you recognize yourself in the familiar landscapes of your youth? The questions have no answers. So you push them away, and you stand your watch, and you collect your wages, and you hope that one day the cost will be justified by the reward. The corridor is quiet, your shift continues, and the gold beneath your cart grows heavier ounce by ounce, while something else, something harder to measure, something that might be your soul, grows lighter in ways you try not to think about. Your shift is over. Another guard takes your place, his armor bright, his eyes still fresh, unweighted by the hours you've carried. You walk through the palace one last time, past the throne room, past the chapels, past the sleeping quarters of the most powerful man in the world. Your boots echo on marble floors worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, by guards who walked these same routes before you were born, who will walk them long after you're gone. The morning light is different now, fuller, the sun having climbed above the eastern walls to illuminate Constantinople spread below the palace hill. Through windows as you pass, you catch glimpses of the city. The great dome of Hagia Sophia, rebuilt by Justinian after the Nika riots, soaring above the rooftops like a declaration of imperial ambition. The Hippodrome, where 100,000 spectators can gather to watch chariots race, where riots have started that burned entire districts. The column of Constantine dressed as Apollo, the founder emperor looking out over the city that bears his name. You pass courtiers beginning their day, their robes fresh, their faces composed for whatever intrigues will unfold in the hours ahead. They glance at you as they always do, acknowledging your presence without truly seeing you, the barbarian guard with the axe, useful but foreign, necessary but never quite belonging. You have stopped expecting anything else. 3 years has taught you your place in this hierarchy. Valuable, yes, but always apart. Past the throne room where you stood for hours yesterday, still and silent while ambassadors offered their gifts. The space is empty now, being cleaned by servants who move quietly through the hall, removing any trace of yesterday's ceremonies, preparing it for whatever today will bring. The golden dome above catches sunlight through its 16 windows, and for a moment the hall seems to glow, seems almost alive. Past the chapels where priests are already chanting morning prayers, their voices rising through incense smoke toward icons that watch with painted eyes. The smell follows you into the corridor, frankincense and myrrh, scents that have become inseparable from this place in your memory. If you close your eyes, years from now, and smell incense, you will be back here, walking these halls, feeling the weight of armor on shoulders that no longer carry it. Past the corridor where you stood watch last night, where the hours stretched like years, where exhaustion became a physical presence you had to push through with each breath. The Swedish guard is there now, in the position you occupied, standing with the same stillness you maintained, watching the same door with the same vigilance. He nods as you pass, you nod back. The work continues. The emperor sleeps or wakes, dines or receives visitors, and the guards stand their stations, an unbroken line of protection that extends back decades, that will extend forward decades more. Your body aches, your shoulders where the mail has pressed for 20 hours, your legs from standing, from walking, from the constant small movements that keep you upright when everything screams to sit, to rest, to stop. Your back from the weight you've carried, not just the armor, but the responsibility, the knowledge that lives depend on your attention, on your willingness to endure past the point where endurance seems possible. Your mind is heavy with the weight of what you've seen and done. The servant you killed in the passage, his blood pooling on stone floors in darkness. The faces of courtiers you've watched being dragged away to fates you can only imagine. The moments of violence that punctuate long stretches of boredom, sudden eruptions that demand action before thought, that leave bodies behind and questions that have no answers. But you've survived another day. That's the victory, small and incomplete but real nonetheless. You woke before dawn yesterday, was it only yesterday? And now dawn has come again and you're still alive, still whole, still capable of walking these corridors under your own power. The emperor lives, the palace stands, and tomorrow you'll do it all over again. You descend stairs toward the guards' quarters, leaving behind the decorated halls where power displays itself, entering the functional spaces where guards and servants live their lives between moments of service. The walls here are plain stone, the floors are worn but unadorned. No mosaics watch you here, no golden domes catch light and transform it into something miraculous. This is the palace stripped of pretense, reduced to its essential purpose, shelter for the people who make the spectacle possible. The guards' quarters smell of men living in close proximity, sweat and leather and weapon oil, bread and cheese, and the sour tang of wine. Some guards are sleeping, having just finished their own shifts. Some are preparing for the day ahead, pulling on mail shirts, checking weapons, eating quick meals before reporting to their stations. The room hums with quiet activity, with the constant turnover of bodies coming and going, the machine that never stops functioning. Your cot waits where you left it, blanket rumpled, the locked chest beneath holding 3 years of accumulated wages. You sit heavily, feeling your body protest the change in position, muscles that have learned one stance now having to learn another. You begin the slow process of removing your armor. The axe first, unslung from your shoulder, laid carefully on the floor beside the cot. Then the sword belt unbuckled, the weapon still in its sheath placed next to the axe. Then the mail shirt pulled over your head with effort, the rings catching on your tunic, the weight lifting slowly from your shoulders until finally it's off and you can breathe without the constriction of iron. The relief is immediate and overwhelming. Your shoulders rise, freed from the burden they've carried. Your spine straightens, your breathing deepens. For the first time in 20 hours, you feel almost light, almost human again. You pull off your boots, your feet screaming as they're released from leather that has compressed them into unnatural shapes. You flex your toes, feeling blood flow return, feeling the ache that comes with restoration. Tomorrow you'll put the boots back on. Tomorrow the cycle will begin again. But for now, this moment, you are free of them. This is the life of a Byzantine palace guard. Endless vigilance, silent sacrifice, and the knowledge that history will never remember your name. No chronicles will record the hours you stood watching empty corridors. No poets will sing of the servant you killed in darkness. No monuments will mark your service. You are anonymous, interchangeable, one god among dozens who perform the same duties, who carry the same burdens, who disappear into the machinery of empire without trace. But the emperor lives because you stood watch. The palace functions because you walked its passages. The empire continues because men like you, foreigners, barbarians, northerners far from home, choose to sell their loyalty for gold, to endure what others cannot endure, to become walls made of flesh between power and those who would destroy it. You lie back on your cot, feeling the straw-filled mattress accept your weight, feeling exhaustion pull at you like a tide. Your eyes close. The sounds of the guards' quarters fade, voices, footsteps, the clink of mail and weapons, replaced by the silence of approaching sleep. Tomorrow you'll do it all over again. You'll wake before the emperor. You'll pull on the armor that feels heavier with each passing day. You'll take your position in corridors and halls, watching faces, scanning shadows, standing guard over a man you've never spoken to, protecting an empire that will never fully accept you as anything other than a useful tool. The gold beneath your cot grows heavier with each month. The chest fills slowly, coin by coin, payment for service rendered, compensation for everything you've given up to be here. One day, perhaps, it will be enough. One day, perhaps, you'll return home with wealth that transforms you from what you were to what you've become. A man who stood in the greatest palace on earth, who guarded the most powerful emperor in the world, who survived when others fell. But that day is not today. Today you sleep. Tomorrow you stand watch. The cycle continues, day after day, shift after shift, the long watch that defines your life in this place where marble and gold cover foundations built on loyalty purchased with coins, on violence delivered without question, on guards who stand and watch and wait through all the hours between dawn and dawn. Your breathing slows, sleep takes you, and somewhere above, in rooms you guard but never enter, the emperor begins his day, surrounded by the invisible protection you and your companions provide, the shield of flesh and steel that stands between him and the world. This is the work, this is the life. This is what it means to be a Byzantine palace guard. The long watch ends only to begin again, and you endure because that's what you're paid to do, because the gold is real and the promise is worth the price, because somewhere deep inside you still believe that one day it will all be worth it. The guards' quarters are quiet now. Your shift is complete. And in the moment before sleep claims you entirely, you think of home, of fjords and forests, of cold northern seas and wooden halls, and you wonder if you'll ever see them again, or if Constantinople has claimed you forever, another northerner swallowed by the empire's endless hunger for loyalty that can be bought but never truly owned. Sleep comes, the long watch ends. Tomorrow it begins again.